Hey class, Tim Elizondo here. I just wanted to send you a video because I'm working my way through your Flipgrid videos, and I would have to say, really fantastic work. There is such clear improvement. It's very impressive, and it's really starting to show to me that I actually think that students in this online class are clearly outperforming like my live face-to-face students. I think there's something about an online environment and I think a combination of the videos and perhaps students adhering to my feedback that when blended together is really producing some strong results. So I was so inspired, I was like, look, I need to give a video about transitions because so many students are asking about transitions. So I have no idea how long this video is going to be, but I think I just wanted to cover it so that you can bring it into your speech next week or also your speeches down the road. And I would also argue in your papers because ultimately, really everything that I'm doing within this class is designed to help you develop a skill set that you can bring to other courses or other experiences in your life. I don't necessarily anticipate that many of you will be giving speeches throughout the rest of your life unless they're very, very rare occurrences. So I think the skills in this course are more for like life skills and student skills and other class skills, all right? So my approach to a transition is also something that I bring into a paper. And I understand that your textbook and other textbooks try to reduce transitions oftentimes into a sentence. But as a writer, I don't want to reduce things, right? If I have to write a paper, like I want an idea to be 3 sentences instead of 1 sentence because it's a 5 to 7 page paper I have to write. If I have to fill a 5 minute speech, I want something to fill time, right? I want something to last 20 seconds, not necessarily 5 seconds, right? Does that make sense? So with this particular transition is designed to lead an audience member from this point to that point in their head, right? Because the audience member, they're listening about, I don't know, Captain America, and you're trying to move them over here about Thor. And my approach that the audience member is distracted, bored, I don't know, sleep deprived, stressed out, has their phone, it may not be paying attention. And so as a speaker, I need to be really clear to really lead this person to this other point, right? And so that's why I really try to, extend out the transition to really, it's 3 basic functions. It has 3 functions. The first is that it summarizes where you've been. It helps illuminate the relationship or the path from where you've been to where you're going. And then it also introduces where you're going. And so those would be our 3 sentences. Now, for my approach, the summary of the previous point is oftentimes just an expression of whatever sentence was here on your outline. Right. My informative speech that I'm working on, it's actually a margarita is what I'm making. And in my first point on my outline, it says, there are a variety of ingredients and individual needs in order to make Tim's mean margarita. And then my A, B, C, D, this entire subpoint are just these different ingredients. Right. So my summary, when I get out of my first point is, I've used the language. My first point just, and I just throw in some sort of adjective. I don't know if my first point, I don't know if it examined, did it describe, did it discuss, did it illuminate, did it explain, did it, I don't know, pontificate upon, did it, right? But chances are my first point illuminated how there are a variety of different ingredients one needs in order to make Tim's mean margarita. Right? So that's my summary. And then perhaps in my second point in my informative speech that I'm going to give next week is it would be that there is a specific sequence one needs to follow in order to prepare the margarita properly within the blender. Yeah, I'm going to add that within the blender, something like that. Right? So in other words, and this is just about the sequence of things that you want to put in, right? First, you're going to put in the ice, right? And then you're going to put in, I don't know, the frozen strawberries, perhaps, right? Then you would put in, et cetera, right? And that's my subpoint. So in this introduction of the next point, right, this third part here, I would add some sort of verb language and then articulate the language here, which is, my second point will explain the specific sequence one needs to follow when placing the ingredients inside the blender. Yeah, I think that works. Okay. All right, yeah. All right, so see, I've got that part of my outline, now I've got that part. All right, now here's the tricky part, is the link. Ugh. The link is a sentence that explains the relationship that this A has to B. All right, what's the relationship? Well, I don't know, the relationship, you got some stuff, and it seems like you got some stuff, and you want to be really careful about the stuff that you put in there. It's almost like there's a science, there's a process, there's a right way of doing it. Oh, okay. So I got to kind of wordsmith, I got to think about things. I'm like, oh, what do I write? What do I, oof. And that's the hard part. I can give you my own examples, but I've worked on them. I used to be a competitive speaker, so I think with this, to me, I see the science between my 2 points. So I think I'd use a metaphor, something like, much like the United States initially putting the first human on the moon. The science of this mixology is super specific. Right? Mixology being just like the science of mixing drinks, right? Okay. So, and then I put all that together. So, I don't know, I'm going to try without. So my first point explained the various ingredients one needs in order to construct Tim's Mean Margarita, period. Much like the United States' historical placement of the first human on the moon, comma, the science of this mixological miracle is very specific, period. Thus, comma, my second point will explain the specific sequence an individual needs to use when placing these precious ingredients inside of the blender. Yeah, I think that's it. In my persuasive speech, that you'll have to write as well, the first point will be some sort of problem, right? And oftentimes, perhaps, the second point is oftentimes a cause. So as a competitive speaker, my link was, so it was always like, my first point illustrated that how this is a problem. And much like a pebble thrown upon perhaps the unquiet pond of Columbia College, when thrown into the pond, the ripples are far-reaching and exceed inside the entire ecosystem. And as a result, my second point will explain how the effects of this problem reach us on a local, a national, and ultimately global level. I don't know, I mean, that's probably something like that. Links are tough. Links are tough. The most generic link that I hear, and please do not use this in your persuasive speech because it's my link that I'm going to give to you as another example, and then I'll just say, dude, you're stealing. Okay? And it's a really generic link. It doesn't really work all the times, but it's, you might be wondering, right? I mean, it just works no matter what. I mean, your first point could be, I don't like the Captain America. My first point just illustrated the important role that Captain America played in the formation of the Avengers. You might be wondering, well, Tim, are all Avengers kind of ancient, old American patriots who were buried in ice? And I'd say, absolutely not. Some Avengers are from space. My second point, right? Or I think Thor's more transdimensional. Is it transdimensional? I don't know. All right. So, is it highly structured? Yes. Is it redundant? Yes. And if you're doing it right, you'll probably say the word point 10 times. You'll probably say the word point 3 times here in your preview. You'd probably use the word point here. Use the word point here. You'd use the word point here. You'd use the word point here. And also 3 times in your conclusion. I should be hearing you say the word point 10 times per speech. Point, 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 point. It will be a plethora of points. It will be a points extravaganza. Because again, I'm really trying to hammer this idea of structure, right? Structure, 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 structure. All right, so that brings us to the second idea, my second motivation for wanting to share this video, which is what's a more advanced way of looking at transitions, all right? So I think for the informative speech, if I was a student, I would just be using the word points. I think, and the persuasive, if I wanted to get more advanced, that's when I would start kind of engaging in these more advanced techniques. But simply put, how do you smooth this out and start hiding the redundancy of it is you have two options. You can use either language or nonverbal communication. First, language. You just don't do it anymore. You might, for example, I don't know, your book advocates take out the link. My first point just illustrated the different ingredients one needs in order to make Tim's Mean Margarita. Now we can turn our attention to it. I mean, it still works, but it's not as detailed. It's possible, perhaps, in your Flipgrid videos that perhaps you know, if you're short on time, you might eliminate the summary and also the link and just introduce points. Perhaps when you get in an argument with your significant other, right, and you're telling them, I don't know, all the negative things that they've done, right, and then you get done with the first point and it's about, right, I don't know, but it's not just about the dishes. We can also talk about your activity at the bar, and then I don't know, so, right, we missed the link, kind of really short summary there, I don't know, moving through, maybe a topical organizational pattern you've prepared in your head. All right. But I'd still use the word points because that's what they're called, right? I mean, these are called points, and so in a speech, I think I'd still want to address that, look, my third point's going to do this. I don't know, that's just... All right, the other option that you have would be to non-verbally. Right? What competitive speakers do is, depending on their room of their stage, is they might have an introduction here, and then when in their first point, they'll move over here. Right, and so here I am, and yeah. So my first point just illustrated the different ingredients one needs in order to make Tim's Mean Margarita. Now we probably, yeah, then they just move their bodies. It's really hard with a camera shot, right? I think it's super awkward for me to just, I don't know, take steps. So you can't do what's called the speaker's triangle. The other way of doing it would just be do through hand gestures. Right. Now that we've done this, now that we do something there. So, yeah. But again, you're being evaluated from positions of structure, right? Of clarity of structure. So I think for speech, I would just use this structure. Yeah, I don't think I would really try to deviate from it. In the persuasive speech, maybe. Yeah, maybe. So, all right. So I think that is what I wanted to share with you in regards to transitions. Let's see. You know, I always feel like I should have some sort of closure or something like this. I guess the other thing that I would probably say is, tell you what, I'm going to offer you extra credit for those of you who are paying attention and watching towards the end. And I think this extra credit is going to go into your informative speech. If you are able to incorporate my favorite kind of a speech trick is, this is also addressing some of your feedback, is I like having a story in the attention getter. Right? A first person, second person, or third person story. And it's my favorite kind of attention getter because it has symbolism in it. It sets the audience up for, in a sense, some sort of psychological reception, right? It puts them in audience mode. I can put things that are symbolic into a story, like a baby, or an eagle, or I don't know, a devilish person, or a leprechaun, or I don't know, a boy wizard flying around on a broomstick trying to get a golden snake. Then at the end of the speech, I go back to the story. Right. So some people ask about how to end their speech. Start with the story, and at the end, go back to the story. So, for example, when I was a competitive speaker, I would start my speech by It's talking about how, as a 16-year-old boy, stood on the edge of Sword Lake, looking down. It was at midnight on kind of a still water as I stood there, wondering if I should jump. And then I'd go into my speech, right? Go into the thesis, whatever it is. And then at the end of my speech, I would go back to that story. And sometimes I would go back to that 16-year-old still standing there at night, wondering if he should jump. Sometimes I'd go back to that story and it would be the boy would be in the water. Sometimes I'd go back to that story and the boy is just, he didn't jump, he's actually walking back to his sleeping bag, like kicking himself, wondering, it's like, did I miss out on living? Right? Sometimes I went back to that story and it was the boy 10 years later returning and the water was gone because it had evaporated, the effects of climate change. Right? Really common forensics trick is in persuasive, oftentimes this is somebody who is hurt. Let's say they're in a car accident, or let's say they were victimized by a crime, or that they were the victim of a natural catastrophe. And then at the end of the speech, they go back to that person at a later point in their life, that perhaps they are prospering, or perhaps they have suffered more, or perhaps they're dead now, or perhaps, right? So here would be perhaps the end of Star Wars, where it's, I don't know, Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Princess Leia, Chewie, all getting their medals, and then you can return to them, and perhaps it's the beginning of Empire Strikes Back, where Han is now on, I don't know, Tatooine, not Tatooine, Hoth, right, looking for, I think he's looking for evidence of the Empire, I think so. All right, so I will give you, how about just 3 extra credit points if you use that rhetorical trick in the informative speech? All right? Because I think it shows just extra levels of audience analysis. All right? Good luck and happy hunting. Bye.